this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again. And we're going to continue now our ongoing series of classic anime reviews, and this time we're going to concentrate on Appleseed. And this is based on a classic manga series by creator Masamune Shirow, who is most famous for, of course, creating Ghost in the Shell, the iconic manga kind of franchise. And Appleseed is just as well renowned and has actually had many interpretations throughout the years. So the one we're going to concentrate on in a minute was released in 1987, but we've also had various more recent animations ranging from about 2004, 2005 to about 2010, where they've adopted a much more of a realistic CG cell shaded animation as opposed to the movie we're going to review here, which is a much more of your traditional 2D animation type. So the concept of Appleseed is basically we have a dystopian setup post events of World War III, and we have that common narrative where the majority of the world is a complete wasteland, lots of barren bodies all over the place, but normally in the centre you have like a utopian, real futuristic technological city called Olympus, and this is run by an artificial intelligence called Gaia. And basically this is the setup here where everything is this clean, pristine buildings, and you have a common setup where we have the population consisting of humans, but what is bio-droids and cyborgs and androids. And the common tell here, of course, is that this technological city is run by the AI, and everything is much more, or predominantly much more of a safe haven, and everything is automated and run by machines. Now, of course, the dynamic here is that you always get a resistance to that from human elements who don't like that. They don't like the fact that everything's kind of regulated and controlled, and they feel like more sterilised, because they feel it takes away the idea of free will and emotion, and the fact that they can't go around and do as they please when they want to, right? Everything's too controlled and regulated, if you like. So you're always going to get pockets of resistance to that. And this is a common, like I said, story that's been told way over the years. If you look at the other classic anime, Battle Angel Alita, that deals with, there's very similar themes to what we see in Appleseed. You had Neil Blomkamp's Elysium, which everybody felt was rift for the likes of Appleseed and Battle Angel Alita, where you have a very high metropolis up here overseeing a barren wasteland on here. And you look at things like Blade Runner, and even more recently the likes of Star Trek Picard and also Westworld, where you're dealing with more synthetic androids or cyborgs. And is it right that these beings should be more in charge, or should we delve back more to having the humans be in control of their destiny? But the counter argument to that is that look what happens, we get a World War III scenario, which is why should machines be more in control of things. So that's basically the setup of Appleseed, and the main story here focuses on two characters, is Deunan and Briareos, and they're essentially part of a SWAT team, which is basically like a terrorist task force who combats the criminal elements within Olympus. And the story here is that we have terrorist factions who, as I mentioned before, don't like the way that Gaia is set up, and they feel human free will is taken too much away from people, so they want to cause as much mayhem and destroy the AI as much as they can. And Deunan and Briareos are there as part of the SWAT team to combat this threat and chase them. And that's basically the plot synopsis of this, right? And in a nutshell, Appleseed, this version is very enjoyable. It's very, if you like, basic, bare bones plot. It's very straightforward. It's not overly complex or heavy-handed if you go back and compare to the later iterations of Appleseed, which take a much more of a darker, more deeper look at it. But in contrast, those are much more grim and, if you like, darker and more, if you like, depressive looks at this whole setup that we have here. Appleseed is your typical very 80s, more upbeat. If you want to say cheesy, fair enough, but I don't think it's too cheesy. But it's a much more brighter, colourful, optimistic kind of tone within this setup here of Appleseed. And yeah, you do have the typical anime sensibilities of violence and, you know, foul language, but it's nothing over the top. It's nothing too intense or, you know, really sort of graphic as such. It's just your typical standard, you know, what you'd expect from anime itself. But yeah, this is just a bright and breezy, fun, entertaining movie. You could be critical and say it's lacking a bit in depth and maybe a bit in characterization, apart from, if you like, the main villain, because they do well with this character here, because you can kind of see both points of view, and maybe that villain does have a point here rather than a point here, even though they're kind of wanting to cause mayhem and destruction. You can more sympathise with their plight and their situation there. So that's good on there. And yeah, when you first watch Appleseed, it's very jarring to get used to the character dynamic between Deunan and Briareos. Deunan is this blonde, white, beautiful blonde woman, and Briareos is this big, massive cyborg, and yet they were lovers or former lovers, depending on what iteration you look at. And yeah, it's a bit hard to get used to, because I've always felt, why didn't you just build Briareos just like the other bio-droids? Why does it have to be this kind of big, if you like, tank, if you like, of a cyborg? He has that similar look. If you remember Super Probotector from the Super Nintendo games, he's got that similar kind of cyborg look about him. It's very cool looking as well. But yeah, their dynamic is a bit getting used to, but they don't really tap much into that of their emotional relationship, or you know, the fact that they were lovers beforehand, whereas other iterations have done. This is just straightforward, down the line, just easy, escapist, action-packed anime that you did get from the 80s. This is about 55 minutes long, so nothing too overly demanding. The good thing about it is you can just jump straight into it. You don't need to read anything about the manga, or you don't need to do any sort of background reading later on here. You can just jump straight into it and just enjoy it. Yeah, okay, the tone is, like I said, a bit more of that 80s cheese, if you like, but it's still, for me, a very enjoyable, very above standard or above average anime that, you know, is fun, it's entertaining, and yeah, you'll just be pleasantly surprised on this one. So if I had to give a quick score of Appleseed, I would give it a 6.9 out of 10. So those are more thoughts on it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you enjoy this version of Appleseed, or did you prefer the much more in-depth, more complex CG versions later on, which I will get around to do? And I think there's like three. I think there was Appleseed Ex Machina, and there was another Appleseed one, I think 2010, 2012, around that sort of time period anyway. They both have their merits and flaws, which I'll discuss later on. But for me, this version here is just bright, breezy, fun, easy to step into, nothing too demanding, nothing too heavy-handed. You can just sit back and enjoy it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Appleseed. I will provide more reviews as we continue this series, but for now, keep yourselves safe, stay distances, keep washing your hands, and I will see you very, very soon.